I wonder if Dad's in the barn. Mom, Dad's watching Red Dawn again.
Hey there folks, how you doing today? Hope all is going well for you. We are here because you asked for it. We are going to be talking about this bag and what's inside of it. Okay, now before you get to banging away on the keyboard there, Kevin, Ryan, you need to understand two things. One, I'm not telling you how to put together a 3-day pack. I'm merely showing you some of the steps that I have taken in preparing mine, which continually evolves, by the way. And two, I'm not telling you to do it. I'm not telling you to do it. I'm not saying, hey, go out and do this, go out and buy this stuff. I'm not. So just move past that, please, guys. Okay, so for the 3 of you that are still with me, thanks for sticking around. Folks, here's the pack. This is an old large frame field pack, large with internal frame, old military pack. It's probably at least, I don't know, 15 or 20 years old, at least, probably older than that. I've had it for, I don't know, maybe 12 or 15 years. I picked it up for this very purpose, and I've had it in varying degrees of readiness over the years. Concerning the pack that I chose to do this with, I chose this pack because it's heavy duty. I don't have to worry about it breaking nearly as much as I would if I went out and bought one at Walmart or, you know, at Academy or something like that, you know, some piece of Chinesium garbage that isn't equipped to hold 60 pounds of gear. I'm sure there's better packs out there. I'm sure some of you have better packs. This is the one I chose to use. Now, because it is so old, I have an idea that it probably does not have the water repellency that it once did. So as I said, I've had this pack laying around for many years, and I've tried to keep it climate controlled and all that, and the material still seems like it's really good, but I kind of doubt the waterproofness of it. And since I'm fixing to pack it up for a 3-day pack for the family, I decided to give it a once over with some Scotchgard. Now, here's a pro tech tip for you. Go out and get yourself a Tony Little Gazelle like this one here behind me. I've never actually gotten on this thing and exercised, but I use it to put stuff on when I'm spray painting all the time, and it works really well. So I'm going to start by hanging it upside down and giving the bottom a good coat of Scotchgard, and I'm going to focus on the bottom of it because if you're out in the woods or doing something like that and you sit it down on the ground, if living in East Texas has taught me anything, that is that anything you sit on the ground is going to get wet. So I'm trying to establish a barrier between the bottom of the bag and my socks. Another tech tip is I'm sure there are plenty of products out there that are sufficient, but when it comes to waterproofing stuff, I always look for original Scotchgard because I know it works. There's some store brands that are a little bit cheaper, and there are some other products that I'm sure are just as good or maybe better. But in this case, we're going to use this one. So now that I've thoroughly coated the bottom of the bag, I'm going to let it dry just a minute, and then I'm going to give the sides a complete coat, but not nearly as heavy as I did on the bottom. And then I'm going to focus a little heavier on the top flap because that's the area that if you're out in the rain is probably going to receive the most of that.
A little longer than a few minutes later.
So I thoroughly coated the entire bag with Scotchgard. I paid special attention to any of the areas that looked like they might receive either rain falling directly on them or might have moisture leach into them from the ground, which is the bottom of the pouches and the flaps that cover the pouches. And then I gave everything else a good coating. It may have been overboard, it may not have been enough, and I'm sure there are some of you that would disagree with the way that I did it, but that's the way we did it with this one. So we'll leave it outside here for a little while to dry out, because Scotchgard really does stink and I don't want to smell it in the house right now. But you do want to let it dry completely before you go loading stuff into the bag. So again, I'm not telling you to run out and do that. I'm telling you I did that because I don't like wearing wet socks, and I wanted to make sure that I could keep the gear inside the bag as dry as possible, given having to take it out in a hostile environment. I've got the bag emptied out. I've got all the contents spread out here on the table. I'm going to do a real quick rundown with the basic overall build of the bag. I know the military guys watching this will be somewhat familiar with it. And I'm going to show you how I have it set up and my reasoning behind the way I set it up. Okay, so here in the bottom, we've got this big heavy canvas pouch. Again, remember I waterproofed it really well. In the bottom of this is where I keep my my shelter gear, my tarps, my space blanket, paracord, and plastic bags and stuff that I would need to get to in a hurry. You know, if it started to rain while you're out, or if you had to cross water and now you needed to dry off or something, you know, that's where I keep that stuff. And if you look on the inside here, you'll see this laced compartment. It separates the stuff from the upper portion of the bag from the lower, so that you can unzip this in the middle and access this gear without losing everything out of the inside of it. That's a really nice feature. This big drawstring portion here is how you get to the main compartment of the bag. That's where I keep most of the clothing and the camping gear. A little coffee pot and the utensils and stuff like that go in that main compartment. And then over here on this side we have a long compartment where I keep some of the tools that I need to have readily available. And then here on the other side, we got two of the half-length pouches. The bottom one I keep a half-gallon of water, and the top one is where I keep emergency medical supplies. And that I need to get a real nice IFAK. That's an individual first aid kit for those of you that don't know what it is. And when I get the IFAK, I'm going to mount it out here on the loops on the outside of the bag. But in the meantime, this upper portion is where I keep, you know, tourniquets and things that somebody would need to get to right away. Now that we've taken a look at the bag and seen the steps to prepare the bag, I'm going to move it out of the way and I'm going to show you real briefly some of the stuff that's in the bag. Now just keep in mind that I haven't put every single item here on the table, but rather a representative of each of the items, just to kind of go over it with you to get your wheels turning on what might go in something like this. All right, so now I've got that big old bag out of the way and I've got all this stuff spread out here on the tabletop. And just to kind of, again, folks, I'm not telling you what to put in the bag. I'm trying to get your wheels turning on how things work. I'm trying to get you thinking. Remember last week's video, I want you thinking about things. Okay, so going back to that big pouch on the bottom portion of the bag, that's where I keep my 4-man tent. Except I don't have a 4-man tent in that bag. Just keep in mind that every ounce that you put inside that bag equates to pounds that you're carrying when it's on your back. Anyone that's ever carried a heavy pouch for a long distance will probably agree with that. So now let's think. Instead of carrying a tent, which takes up a lot of room and weighs a lot, in the bag, you know, again, in my case, 5 people, what could you carry? Well, for starters, I have a camouflaged, I think this one is a 7x9 tarp here. Large enough for adequate ground cover if I needed to put it down to keep us from getting wet sitting on the ground. You could also utilize a little bit of parachute cord, string it up like a bivy tent. In addition to that, I've got some of these space blankets. I've got a couple different kinds in the bag. These here are about 12 bucks at Walmart. They're orange on one side and they're shiny on the other side. They are really nice. They're really heavy. They don't make a lot of noise when you're wrapped up in them. They don't tear up very easily. But they're orange and silver, so you're not going to hide from anybody in that, okay? Another option would be this one here, which is essentially the same thing, except for it's OD green on one side. So if you needed to put it up as a cover to keep the blue helmets from spotting you with their thermal... sorry, I was propagandizing again. No, but anyway, So in the bottom of the pouch, instead of having a tent proper, I have a tarp, and I have several of these large space blankets. I also have a bunch of these. This, folks, is another space blanket. This is a Mylar one that is also shiny on one side and olive drab green on the other side. These are nowhere near as good as something like this. However, they are way better than those little flimsy foil emergency blankets they sell at Walmart for $2. These are about $6 a piece, and if you have one of these in your pouch for each person, in addition to the big space blankets, unless you're in a really cold, inclement climate, you're probably going to be able to keep from developing hypothermia or something like that. Also, down there in the bottom of the pouch, I've got a couple of big, heavy trash bags. These are like the kind that fit inside a 55-gallon drum. I have those. If you needed to make a big, heavy poncho, you could get your knife out and turn it into a poncho. If you needed to put it over your bag to store it overnight because it doesn't fit inside the tent, it would keep it dry. So it's good to have a couple of trash bags in there. Other items that I keep in the bottom of the pouch is this weather band radio. It's actually, this one's got a lot of features on it. It was about $25, I think, on Amazon. Multiple different power sources. It's got a crank. It takes takes 3 AA batteries. It also has a built-in chargeable battery, a little solar panel on top of it, or you can plug it USB style. And I packed it inside a food saver bag to keep it from getting wet or damaged. Additionally, down there I have one of these little cheapy flimsy ponchos for everybody in the group. So moving on, that's more of the shelter items. Remember, when it comes to shelter, you can go longer without water than you can without shelter. So just keep that in mind. That being said, you do want to have water and you want to have redundancy. Right here, again, this is an example of water. This is a half-gallon, pretty heavy little jug full of purified water. Yes, the jug was sanitized. Yes, the water inside it is purified. Yes, I will change it out periodically so that it doesn't get too stale. I picked this jug for several reasons. One of them is it is very heavy duty. If you dropped it a few times, it probably wouldn't break. It's only a half a gallon, so even my 7-year-old can pick it up and drink out of it if she needs to. It's easy to refill. It fits in the side pocket of the bag that I showed you earlier. So there's a lot of reasons that I picked that size container. You may have a better idea of what works for you, and I suggest you use it. Additionally, from the Waterworks, we have this collapsible bucket. Here, I'll pop it out. See, this is, I forget how big it is. I think it's a 1.5 gallon, somewhere around that. It holds enough water that you could go down to a creek and get some water to purify so you could drink or bathe with or cook with or whatever. Folds up nice and small, and it fits down in the bottom of the pack no problem. Now down inside that nice little spot there in the bag, I keep a roll of duct tape, I have some zip ties, I have some flagging tape, I have a signal mirror, and I have some camouflage paint all sealed up in a food saver bag here. And I have a list of contents on the top of it so I don't forget what's in there. Also down in there I have one of these little wire cable saws. These are not the most fun for cutting something, but concerning limiting space inside your bag and weight you're carrying around, this right here really is a lot better than like one of those folding camp saws if you have much other stuff in your bag. I have a pair of gloves that really don't need any explanation other than there are times when you'd need to do something that you would want to wear gloves to protect your hands, and those are adequate for the purposes of this bag. But getting back to water and redundancy, you'll see a lot of redundancy here. I have a Sawyer water filtration system here, as well as some iodine tablets sealed up in a food saver bag here to keep them safe and dry. I purchased them in February of this year, and they're marked as such. I won't have to change that out for a good while. I figure probably it would be good for 5 years. I'll probably change it before then. That would give me a way to purify water for my group and should be adequate for my group for 3 days in the event that it was needed. Okay, so moving on to some of the other stuff that's in the bag. I have a little folding camp stove that's made to take these cans of Sterno canned heat. I could probably get away with just having one of these in this pack for 5 people. And what I may do is split these 2 cans between this bag and the other bag that accompanies it for my group of 5 people. Moving on to food. Granola bars, those little energy bars, the high calorie bars are great. Just understand that anything dry like that, or oatmeal packets, or ramen soup, or whatever you packed in your pack is going to require more water to cook it with. It has to be rehydrated. I do have a few cans of soup and ravioli in the bag. They do not require any additional moisture. They're high in caloric intake. If you're trying to keep the kids happy for a couple of days, a couple of those cans could go a long ways. Again, with redundancy, I have here sealed in a food saver bag, I have a cigarette lighter and a magnesium fire starter. I have another lighter that's just loose by itself, and I have another lighter that has some money wrapped around it, again sealed in the food saver bag. I mentioned before, I do not have a proper IFAK attached to this bag. That is something I am working on. I'm actually researching the one I'm going to put on it. In the meantime, I made some little tiny packages for various over-the-counter medications, as well as the prescription medications that certain members of the group need. 3-day supply. Got some cortisone cream in case somebody gets into poison ivy. I've got some chapstick, some rubber gloves, some horse tape that I vacuum sealed to reduce the profile and keep it dry. Extra batteries for the flashlight, more on that later. Guys, if you're putting together a bag and there's a female in your group, talk to that female about personal items that she may need. There might not be much of a cool factor to that, but it'll keep you out of trouble in the event that she needs them and you don't have them. A couple of items that I have in this pack that are not completely necessary, but they definitely help out with the creature comforts is this little solar powered battery bank here. You can charge your radio, you can charge your cell phone. It's got a built-in flashlight in it. It's got a big solar panel so that it can self-charge out in the sun. In fact, it's charging right now with the lights here in the shop. I also have a camp shower. It's one of those black bag types that you can put 5 gallons of water in, hang it in a tree, let it heat up in the sun, and then you can bathe yourself. I don't have them here on the table, but you also need a package of baby wipes with you, you know, for personal hygiene purposes. And I've got one of these little folding camp shovels. These are actually very heavy, and this is an item that you could probably get by without. There are several other things that need to go in my pack. There are several other things that'll need to go in your pack. Again, I'm not making a recommendation on what you should do. I'm giving you some ideas to get your wheels turning with this. Let me get all this stuff back in the bag and we'll finish this up. Something that I forgot to mention there is I have a t-shirt, 2 pairs of socks, 2 pairs of underwear, and a sweatshirt for every person in the group in the bag. And I've got mine, again, all sealed up in these food saver bags to keep them dry in the event that you're out in the rain or have to cross a creek to get away from the blue helmets or whatever. All right, something else I wanted to show you. In addition to carrying a pocket knife, I have a Leatherman zip tied here to the strap where it's easy to get to. And over here I've got a good quality flashlight with some fresh batteries, and the batteries that I have in the pack are the same batteries that that flashlight takes. So just to get your wheels turning, get you thinking, just understand, folks, that this bag is not something really that you put together and never touch or think about what's in it. I know here in the area that we're in, there's enough of a difference between summer and winter that you might want to change some items out that are in the bag. There's certain things that would be good for probably 6 to 9 months out of the year, but you know, during the heat of summer, you might not need a sweater, you might need some sunblock. Keep in mind that in the summertime, you're going to need more water than you need in the winter. Don't forget to put a roll of toilet paper in there. If you have baby wipes, you could get by without the toilet paper, but somebody's going to need to blow their nose or whatever. So put a half a roll of toilet paper in there. So, you know, just enough to get you by for a couple of days of inconvenience. Remember, the idea behind a 3-day pack is not to keep you comfortable for 3 days. It's to keep your hide alive so that you can tell stories about it later. And one thing I know for sure is that there's going to be people that disagree with the way that I did this, and that's okay. That's what this is, an open dialogue. I've had numerous times over the years that I've been doing stuff, somebody will show me a better way to build a mousetrap. As I said at the very beginning, I'm not telling you how to do anything. I'm just trying to get you thinking. There's going to be more on this later. This is going to wrap it up for today. Take care, folks. God bless. All right, folks. I hope you enjoyed that, because that's what we did it for. But remember, we're trying to get you thinking. Because the more you think
You're
about
welcome. Now you know, and knowing is half the battle. Let's go, Brendan.
Mom, Dad's watching Red Dawn again.
Oh man, my hat fell off. Blooper reel. Hey, we gotta do it again. My hat fell off.
Okay.